The Canucks are in town, so we'll tee up that game for tomorrow. And there's some rumblings that the Leafs and Canucks have been scouting each other here, Dave. So we're going to take a look and we're going to give a list of 5 guys that we think the Leafs could be interested in from Vancouver. That's what we got set for you on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. With me, my co-host on the Locked On Leafs pod, it's Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. And just a reminder that this is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe to the show for free wherever you get your podcast. And you can also now check us out on YouTube. That's Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, share, all of the applicable things that people say when they're on the YouTubes. Go ahead and do all that. And again, we're going to be doing a giveaway once we get to the 500 subscriber mark. We're inching our way to 200 now, Dave. So we're getting closer, we're getting closer. So once we get to 500, then we'll be giving away some sweet Leaf swag. So make sure you do go and subscribe on YouTube. It's gonna be a fun show tonight. Coming off the loss against Buffalo, Dave, I think everybody wants the Leafs just to get back at it, get back on the horse, and hopefully they can put up a solid effort against the Vancouver Canucks tomorrow night. That said, there's a guy on the other end of the ice named Thatcher Demko who has once already stolen the show when taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Does that worry you at all going into tomorrow night?
It's almost like when you're watching Seinfeld and you just go, Newman,
yeah, right? Yeah, like Demko's the Newman. It's like, oh, Demko. Oh.
Yeah, Thatcher Demko, pretty good goaltender. Kind of one that you wish the Leafs had at this moment.
Well, yeah, he's not too shabby, and I mean, he's on a beautiful sweetheart deal too. I think he's only making like $5 million for the next 5 years. Like they got him locked up to a perfect contract. But he's a terrific goaltender. So obviously, you got a team that struggled to get the puck past Craig Anderson. Hopefully they do a much better job of generating offense than they did in Buffalo, because that's going to be the key, right? I mean, they can't go out and put on the same effort in Buffalo here in Vancouver. Like as Vancouver is not the cream of the crop by any means, but they're a tough team. They're a team that's competing for the playoffs. I think they're coming off of a win. I believe that just won final. They beat the Islanders tonight 4-3. So they're coming off of a victory, and they're going to be coming into town, and they're going to try and scrape and claw and pick up points. They're along for the playoff hunt along with the Maple Leafs. So it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. But like, if you're Toronto, who do you counter with? Demko's going to be on the other side, but who are you countering with? Do you go back to Mrazek, or you go back to Jack Campbell? He's had a week, I guess, since his last start in Detroit to tinker with his game, to practice and get some good practices. He's been at home, so he's been able to practice at home a little bit, sleep, go see his family, his cats. He's got a cat now. I think he's got 2. So maybe now, after a week off, maybe he's rejuvenated. You stick him back here in Vancouver, or do you go back to the well and you keep going on with Peter Mrazek?
I'd be very curious to see how they play that, because I feel like they could easily just go back to Peter Mrazek, kind of stake that claim that they really want to give him that chance to claim the starter spot. But at the same time, Jack Hamill's been off for a while, and how many games do you really want him off before you're like, maybe we need to get him in one, because then it's going to be almost what their next game is not until Monday.
Monday. I mean, it's not too long.
It's a week, but it's a whole week. It'd be an entire week of just no games. Like that because remember, Saturday till I feel like if you're keeping it like a goaltender like Jack, who hasn't really been in that frame of mind to be off for an entire week, I don't know if you can do that to him either. Like, and they're gonna need Mrazek at some point with the back-to-back between the Blue Jackets and Seattle. So I feel like if you go with Jack, it'll be okay, and then you can go with Peter for the next game.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna end up playing like one of those goalies. You're gonna end up playing 2 of the next 3 games. I think I'm opposite of you. I think I go Peter Mrazek. You stick him back in net, and you just keep letting Jack find his game. I was chatting about this with Craig Button the other day, and he was saying like goaltenders sometimes they need to literally tear their game down and rebuild it, and sometimes that could take more than a week. Sometimes that could take a couple weeks. And if that's the case, just giving Jack Campbell a couple of extra days to maybe get some hard practices, knowing that he doesn't have to play. Like if we wake up today and he gets a good hard practice in, knowing he doesn't have to exude so much energy tomorrow, that'll allow him to put in that work, right? And not be worried about feeling, not being fresh for tomorrow. Whereas if he's starting tomorrow, maybe you don't get that full practice and so I think that the practice time is actually like a really big sticking point with goaltenders. And that's why I think maybe just a couple more days. I mean, at this point, no goaltender's in any sort of rhythm anyway. So it's not like, oh, we got to get him back in because it's going to throw him out of rhythm. No goalie's in a rhythm right now anyway. So I think, honestly, I'm kind of leaning to put Peter Mrazek back in. And if he plays well, that's good. But if he doesn't, then I think at that point it's okay. But then you got to go back to Jack Campbell because it's not like Mrazek played poor against Buffalo. Like he didn't play great. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a great game, but a lot of those goals were, just bad play, tips in front and redirects and, wide open players in front of the net. It wasn't all completely his fault. So you can't blame that goaltending on that game against Buffalo. So I think maybe give him another shot here against Vancouver and allow Jack Campbell to keep working on his game.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one thing with Mrazek is he didn't look terrible against Buffalo, and he wasn't terrible against the Washington Capitals either. Like he almost had to have had a meltdown type of game like Jack had against the Red Wings to kind of say, all right, like
And
like
Columbus, the start before in Columbus too, he
and
didn't play well.
yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if as you said, if they went back with Mrazek just because he hasn't necessarily lost the net, but at the same time he hasn't gained it either. So maybe you give him that one more shot and kind of really tell Jack too, like we're giving Peter another one here. If he falters, then it's on. Then we'll likely go to you. Like that's how
Yeah.
because you don't want to make Campbell feel like he's the scapegoat throughout all of this, but you also have to make him realize that we're not just gonna hand you the net back either.
All right, we'll continue talking about this game on the other side, previewing it, teeing it up, and then we're also going to go and go through our list of 5 guys on Vancouver that Toronto might be scouting. AGM Lawrence Gilman was spotted not once but twice scouting the Vancouver Canucks on road games, so he was in attendance for a couple of games, and you got to think that means that there's something afoot. Is it JT Miller? Is it Luke Shen? Is it somebody else? I don't know, but we got our 5 players that we think the Maple Leafs could or should be interested in. That'll be later in the podcast. But up next, we're going to continue to preview the game. But first, Dave, why don't we hear from a word from our show sponsor?
Yeah, so obviously one of our best show sponsors, Built Bar. This time of year, I've been pretty good with my New Year's resolutions. I haven't fully broken yet. It's getting really tough. It's getting tough. We're in March now. 3 months in, it's getting really tough. But luckily, we have Built Bar here to help us stay on track. Mike, have you tried the puffs?
I have. I really have. You asked me that while I'm drinking. That's very terrible of you to do.
Sorry, I did.
But I have, and they are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I'm waiting for mine to come in.
Mhm.
I've tried the other stuff. I have not tried the puffs yet. But apparently, if you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Gotta love the 100% real chocolate.
Mhm.
So they come in many different flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream, which is my favorite, by the way. One of my favorites. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious and it'll be good for you. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. So that's LOCKed15 for 15% off at built.com.
And welcome back into the Locked On At Least podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano, one of the hosts of the show. Alongside my co-host, it's Dave Morassutti. This is a daily Maple Leafs podcast, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can find us also in audio format wherever you get your podcast. And if you're listening on audio, you can also find us on YouTube. Locked On Leafs is the handle there on YouTube. So the Maple Leafs are welcoming the Vancouver Canucks to town on Saturday. Dave, guess who's going to be in attendance for that one?
Yours truly.
The guy with two thumbs and pointing at himself. For those on YouTube, you can see. For those who are listening, this guy. That's right. I'm going to be in attendance. It'll be my first Leaf game since the Canucks were in town back in like February before the pandemic. That was the last Leaf game that I did go to.
My God.
Back in, would have been like February 2020. Exactly. So I'm excited to get back into the building. I'm praying for a good game here, man. Like, I'll be so upset if they treat me to the same garbage that the people who were there on yesterday got treated against Buffalo. I'll be so upset by that, but I don't think so. I think there's got to be a pulse. There's way too much talk about needing to be better against these teams. It's a soft schedule. You got to take advantage of it. The Canucks, they're not going to roll over here. You do have to go in and play your game, but don't play down to them, because if you play down to them, they'll dictate the game, and they got a goalie on the other side who can stop the puck, and they got a couple of players too who can fire it into the back of the net. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Garland. Like, they've got some real weapons, and you got to be careful if you are the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can't be taking them lightly like they did the other night against Buffalo. So I'll be excited to be in attendance. If you're there, shoot me a message maybe on Twitter at @MakeItAScoreCanuck. Maybe we can meet up at an intermission break or something like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. Meet some of the fans of the pod, perhaps. But yeah, I'm excited to take in the game. You said you got tickets later in the month, right? Against
Carolina.
Yeah.
On St. Patty's Day, I'll have my St. Pat's jersey on.
Did you actually, if I'm not mistaken, the jersey for that game was leaked by Martha Stewart on Instagram? Did you see this?
Oh no. You know what? I heard something about Martha Stewart and Justin Bieber being in like a post together.
Yeah, so Justin Bieber yesterday, he was celebrating his 28th birthday, and for whatever reason, I don't know if Martha Stewart was there or if this is an old photo, but they took a photo together. She posted it on her Instagram, and he's in a Leafs uniform, and it's like it's either a black or a dark blue. I don't really know exactly. I don't know if you could pull this up and maybe we can screen share it for those who are on
Yeah, I'm doing that
on
right
YouTube.
now.
Yeah, it's on Martha Stewart's Instagram. I don't know if this is an old jersey or if this is just like if they leaked it like on her Instagram, because that would be interesting. And the thought process, I believe, so that one right there, if you're watching on Locked On Leafs,
that's
YouTube,
black with like a really dark blue Leafs logo.
Yeah. So that might be the jersey for that next gen game that you're going to.
Well, so somebody told me that the next gen game might not be that day because they're gonna have St. Patty's jerseys for that day, and the next gen game is gonna be a different game.
Oh, see, I thought that they were combining them into the same game. I thought I had heard that because it was supposed to be back in December.
Yeah,
the game against the Blues, but that did not end up happening. So perhaps you could be right, but still, that is interesting that there might be another jersey outside of the Heritage Classic, outside of the St. Pat's, that the Maple Leafs might wear at some point this season. But let's get back into the game against the Vancouver Canucks. Couple of things that I want to talk about, and so obviously the Rasmus Sandin Morgan Rielly pairing blew up in Sheldon Keefe's face, right? But if there's a time to tinker, it is now. So I understood the fact that Muzzin's out. You might as well with a bit of a softer schedule, see what you got in some of these other pairings. If something hits, great. Now you found something. If it doesn't, you probably don't go back to it, like the Sandin and Riley pairing. Something that got a couple of shifts towards the end of the game against Buffalo that I really hope gets a solid look this week, in this game here. How do you feel about maybe Morgan Riley and Ilya Labushkin getting paired up together as like a top pair type of role?
Yeah, so there's obvious benefits to that because Labushkin actually plays a more defensive style game than Morgan Riley and Rasmus Sandin.
Hmm.
I think he's been. You know what the thing is about him that I've liked? You don't hear much about him.
Yeah, he's quiet. He's
The
quiet.
best thing you can ever say about a defenseman is if they are quiet, then they're doing their job.
Yeah. Like,
Like
not that he's TJ Brody, but he's often like, not you don't notice him in the way that you don't really notice TJ Brody either. And that's a good thing. If you're not noticing defensemen, especially defensive defensemen, that means that they're certainly doing their job because you're not constantly yelling at them for turnovers.
I actually have some. I don't know if you were gonna bring this up, but I do have something to bring up to show the fans, the listeners,
Is
why
this
you.
the Jay Fresh card here?
I got the J Fresh card.
Yeah, let's show it up. This is what's cool about watching on YouTube. You can actually see what some of the stuff that we can post visually. We'll audit. We'll obviously talk about it as well. But up here on the screen, this was posted by Jay Fresh, who does tremendous in the analytics community, and he posted his top 10 projected defenseman defensive WAR ranking, and these projected wins are added from individual impact on expected goals against at even strength based on a 3-season weighted average. So the top player is New York Islanders' Adam Pelech, and yeah, he's just an absolute stud shutdown defenseman. Devin Tays, same. Chris Tanev comes in at number 4. He's always been known as a mean just an absolute shutdown defensive type defenseman. But coming in at number 6, Maple Leafs new acquisition Ilya Labushkin, 6th in the league with a projected WAR of 1.1, which is also tied with Charlie McAvoy, Jonas Brodin, and Esa Lindell. That's pretty good company there for a guy who basically Sheldon Keefe picked up for a bag of pucks and, AKA Nick Ritchie.
A guy that fell out of favor in Toronto for something that they really, really needed. And yeah, I mean, though, like if you look at all those defensemen, like the ones that are above them, you want any day on your team.
Yeah.
Even the guys below him, like Jonas
I'll
Brodin,
take. Like, even at number 10, Jonas Siegenthaler is having a real solid season. He's
very quiet, very solid season. Dylan
yeah.
DeMello is a guy I always wanted the Leafs to try to get.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe the price was a little high when the Jets acquired him, but they've kept him around, and that's proven to be a good investment. Esa Lindell, those are solid defensive defensemen. Like we're talking about guys that do one thing and they do it very well.
Shut down the opposition.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've always kind of clamored for in Morgan Riley. I mean, TJ Brody's done an exceptional job at that. But if you want to give Brody and Hall a decent run, well, maybe what if Labushkin works? Because he, like we talked about with Brody, he's quiet and he doesn't make mistakes. And if he could just make those, play like that and allow Morgan Riley to jump up into the rush and feel like Labushkin is sound defensively enough to protect him, I think that could work out as a pairing. And it's something that I wouldn't mind them trying out here against the Vancouver Canucks tomorrow night.
Yeah, I like, and they should have the day. This is not something they're just going to throw out the day of the game. Like they have Friday's practice
Mm-hmm.
to go through. I mean, we're recording this before Friday's practice, but I would be surprised if it wasn't either Labushkin or Brody with Riley. Now they could try Justin Hall with Morgan Riley, which I don't think would really work out as well because it feels like Justin Hall, as our good friend Tony Ferrari mentioned, he kind of needs that. I wouldn't call him a babysitter, but somebody that stabilizes that line. I actually have in mind of Justin Hall and TJ Brody. I feel like Justin Hall has got a little more confidence in his game playing with TJ Brody. And who knows? TJ Brody might actually like the break of playing on the right side and playing on his strong side, which I don't think he's probably done in a very long time.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm in favor of trying Labushkin there, because really, who else are you going to try there? You're not going to try Sandin again. We already know that experiment's over. Travis Dermott, I do not think. Like, I think you go back with the Liljegren Sandin pairing. You play them in that third pairing, give them a little bit of sheltered time, more offensive zone play, and then you got Labushkin and Riley. That's two solid pairs if you have Labushkin, Riley, and then you have Hall and Brody. Like, that's a solid top four.
Assuming it works.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
on
if
paper,
it works, it's intended.
Yeah, like on paper, that looks good. So I'm hoping that's something that we do see. And if we move up and we talk about maybe tinkering a little bit more, maybe in the top six. I mean, that game against Buffalo, man, like that second line, there was just nothing. Nothing. I think Brian Hayes today on Overdrive was talking about how that may have been William Nylander's worst game in his career. Like, since he's gotten to the NHL, worst game, just zero pulse. He was literally just out there skating laps around the rink, and not in a good way, just literally just skating, like just without any purpose whatsoever. And yeah, he didn't really do a whole lot. And, you know, that whole line didn't do a whole lot. So we've toyed with this before, but I think tomorrow might be, it's kind of for a twofold reason, but a good game to also tinker with Nick Robertson in the top six. And we touched on it yesterday, but Nick Robertson could potentially be of interest to the Vancouver Canucks if they want to make a big deal. Like, if they want to get a guy like JT Miller, you would think that Nick Robertson would be one of those guys that Vancouver's going to want back and put him in a position to succeed, play him up in the lineup, get him some good minutes, playing with solid players, and maybe, they can make him look really good. Maybe Tavares and Nylander can make him look really good in front of the Vancouver Canucks brass, right in front of their own very eyes. So that's another little tweak that I think I would like to see for Toronto tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a tough game, and they kind of need to see something a little bit different. I think, like, they need to get 4 lines rolling. They can't just rely on one, which we've been saying for a while.
Yeah, actually, though, because when that happens, well, what you saw happen on
Yeah,
on Wednesday night will happen again. That'll happen again, and that cannot happen again. It just can't. It really can't. All right, why don't we take one more quick break? When we get back, let's get into some trade discussion, because as we noted before, Toronto AGM Lawrence Gilman, formerly of the Vancouver Canucks, actually, years and years ago though, has gone to scout the Canucks at least twice recently that the insiders know of. It was brought up today on Overdrive. It was also brought up on Insider Trading. So you got to assume that there's interest there on both sides to try and strike a deal. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've created a 5 players we think the Maple Leafs could be interested list. And we both have 5 guys, and we'll get to that list in a moment. But before we get there, let me tell you about one of our friends, and that's one of today's show sponsors. That's betonline.net. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fire coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today to see use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And you could if you want to place a wager down tomorrow's game, you could do that. I might do that at BetOnline before I go, because in my estimation, even if you bet a measly little $5, you are so much more invested into that game. It doesn't even matter what it is. It legitimately could be Seattle, Arizona. If I got a $5 bet on the over, man, am I ever watching that thing just with hawk eyes.
Imagine if you spend more than $5, you're going to be watching it in a little bit of a different view.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm spending $500, I'm watching just beads coming from my skull. All right. So with the Canucks in town, first and foremost, it's also a tie-in there, but also the fact that the Maple Leafs have been scouting Vancouver, according to a lot of industry insiders. So we're going to look at 5 players each that we think the Maple Leafs could be interested in. Who are the guys who they're going to scout? Who have they been taking a look at? So I've got my 5. You got your 5. Why don't you go through your 5 guys, then I'll go through my 5 guys.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start with the defenseman, Luke Shen. I watching that game against the Sabres, they desperately need a guy that has a little bit more grit to his game, a little more. I'm not going to get pushed around. I'm actually going to do the pushing for
Yeah,
a change. I think Luke Shen is that guy. He's got experience in the playoffs, even though he didn't play a top 4 role with the Lightning. He still provided them with the depth that they needed to win the Stanley Cup. So Luke Shen is. I'm not going in a particular order, but he's the first name that came to my mind. Another name that I've heard and I'm kind of intrigued in is Conor Garland. This is a guy who it's a little surprising to hear his name out there considering he's in his first season with the Canucks after that
yeah,
big trade with Arizona. But
yeah,
he's the type of guy that I think could get that second line going. He might he has a little more cost in that he's got his has another 4 seasons left on his deal at just under 5 million for a second line guy. That's not too shabby. Um, JT Miller, kind of in that same vein where it's not just a rental option, but it's a guy that I think provides a little more versatility to the game. Maybe brings a little more of that Michael Bunting style that I think that second line needs. I think an elevated, obviously, considering how he has played.
yeah. He's just a play driver. I mean, that guy's just a rock star
Yeah.
out there. He plays the game hard. Like you talk about, if there's a game like last night where there's no pulse, he'll bring the pulse and he'll bring it out of people. And also was kind of missing last night, and that's the edge that he could bring to this team. And they need some mean, nasty players. So I'm with you on that one.
Another guy's Tyler Mott. Uh, some might not think he's a sexy name, but he's a good depth player. He's a good penalty killer. I just think if you're looking to, make sure that your depth below the lineup is solid, he's a guy that you can look at there. And then another one, it seems like a little out there, but I'm going to say Brock Besser because I think
Mm,
if you add a Brock Besser like that's another pure shooter that you could add to the power play that you can. I mean, the power play hasn't looked great lately. Like it's struggled the last few games. I mean, this is not a reason why you go out and get Brock Besser because your power play
no.
doesn't look good the last few games.
But
But I think
if for those who aren't counting, that is 6 games in a row that this power play has not scored a goal, by the way. Right, they're 0 for the last 13, I want to say.
yeah, and Frank Servalli seems to think that Brock Besser could be dangled out there. He's a pending RFA. So
So his issue is like similar to Line, where he's got his AAV is only like in the 6 million range, but
yeah,
he's got himself a hell of a qualifier. So if you want to retain his rights, it's a very expensive qualifying offer to do that. So that's why Vancouver might be interested in moving on, because they're not sure if they're going to want to qualify it. That also kind of brings his trade value down too. So I've heard his name out there that they might be willing to listen on him, but if you got to take a hit because his QO is so high, I don't know. I don't know if you make that trade, because he's a solid player, man. I mean,
oh, he's an excellent player.
he can score goals. I mean, a little bit of a down year, I guess. Got 30 points in 49 games, 10 goals. You certainly would want a little bit more out of Brock Besser, but early on this season, that team was in such a funk. I mean, he's only shooting. What's he got? 10% shooting percentage. What's his career at? Let me just check quickly. Shooting percentage for his career is 13%. So, he's shooting, well below 3 full percentage points below his shooting percentage, his career shooting percentage. So, yeah, I think
That's
he's
why
somebody
that's
he'd be a buy low candidate, that's for sure.
yeah.
For Toronto,
And
buy
for
low candidate.
Vancouver, I just don't know if Vancouver would want to sell low on him either. But I
Yeah.
think if you're a Leafs team that if you're looking to just strike rich on, really improving yourselves offensively, considering how at times scoring has been hard to come by when teams decide to just turn up clog the neutral zone and just really give a tough time. Brock Besser is a guy that will fight to get into the scoring areas. So
Yeah, he will. He will. He's got a bit of a sneaky stick too in the neutral zone. I'll say that. Bit of
yeah,
a sneaky stick. Just watch for it on Saturday, and you let me know if you think that's true or not. All right, my that was that 5? Yeah,
that is 5.
that's 5 players for you. So we have 4 of the 5 are the same. Realistically, 4 of our 5 players are the exact same. So I also had Tyler Mott for a lot of the same reasons. I think he could add depth to this lineup. He's someone who could play all 3 positions, but specifically because he can also play down the middle. There's not much center depth. Remember, that was the whole point about trying to bring in Dzingel, is he may be just a little bit of center depth for this squad. But he
Mhm.
got claimed, so it's no longer there. And Tyler Mott's actually a solid player. He's a bit of an energizer bunny himself, and great on the penalty killing, and just eats pucks for a living. Like, he literally just dives out in front of pucks for fun. Like, I swear he does that. So Tyler Mott would be a great player to add to this fourth line, just to kind of make this team a little bit deeper. Yaro Halak was a different one that I had at number 4 here. If they do want to get a goaltender, someone who's got a cheap cap hit this season. This is why it's interesting about Halak, though. It's cheap this season. I believe it's at 1.5 million this year. I'm just going to double check that. I believe it's at 1.5, but the problem is that I think he may have already played in that game, but he had a clause that, yeah, he has a clause in his contract where if he plays a certain amount of games, he ends up with like a $1.5 million cap hit for next season as well. I believe is the case. Some sort of performance bonus that he hit. And I think that it did end up hitting. So that's the only thing about him, is if you do acquire him, you're also acquiring that cap bonus for next season. And that might not be something that Toronto's going to want to do, considering we all know what their cap situation is already. But I mean, if you're thinking about win now, he is a goalie who has been in a tandem and perhaps just some insurance there. So maybe he's just another goalie on the market that they might be interested in. Luke Shen is another one who I had that you had as well. We all know who Luke Shen is, played many years here. And he was a whipping boy when he came back. He was the 5th overall pick and expected to be a top pair shutdown guy. He wasn't really that, but he comes back for a second tour of duty. He's only going to be expected to be a 3rd pair penalty killing hitting machine. And he will excel in that role. And even if he's just like the 6 or 7 guy, that's great depth and somebody who has a winning pedigree coming off back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. So Luke Chen's a guy who I like as well. Conor Garland, you mentioned it. He's a player who you can put up there on the second line. He's a guy who the Leafs did have interest in, actually, before he got dealt to Vancouver. Reportedly, Toronto was in on Conor Garland, and ultimately they ended up making the move. The Arizona Coyotes made the move with the Canucks instead. So perhaps they circle back on Garland and try and add him to this team. And then JT Miller, of course, is going to be the number 1 guy who you would hope that the Maple Leafs are looking to acquire here. I don't know what it would take. It's going to take a lot. It's not going to be, we put out that video like about a couple of weeks ago. People are like, oh, there's no way that they're going to do Alex Kerfoot for JT Miller in the comments. It's not at all what I was suggesting. All I was saying was JT Miller would have to be part of the package, or sorry, Alex Kerfoot would have to be part of the package going the other way to make the money work, is what I was insinuating. You would also get draft picks and prospects on top of that. So it's not going to be a 1-for-1 swap like some Canucks fans were accusing me of when they found it on YouTube, Dave. They found it on YouTube.
Mike, J'accuse.
Yeah, they found it on YouTube and they took me, they quoted me, misquoted me, and then just decided to, go Twitter troll and just throw shade my way. It's like, that's not what I was saying. But
That's how
JT
you know you
Miller,
made it, Mike. That's how you know you made it.
yeah, I guess so, right? Haters are the motivators, whatever the hell that saying is. But JT Miller, like, in all honesty, would be the perfect addition for this team. Like, everything that he brings is what this club needs: goal scoring, tenacity, a guy who plays with his heart on his sleeve. kind of a chip on the shoulder type of player. He can put the puck in the back of the net. He can lay you out in the middle of the ice on the glass. Like, this is honestly a perfect player for a Maple Leafs team that needs, a guy who's got edge, but can also score at a point per game rate. So those are my 5. You had your 5. I think, well, the only difference was I had Yaro Halak and you had Brock Besser.
Yeah, I did not think of Yaro Halak just because I know he had a kind of a rough outing the last time, and it was just like,
Yeah.
eh. But I mean,
He did.
I've also seen the Yaro Halak that got the Montreal Canadiens past some very tough matchups in the playoffs. So
Yeah, and he didn't do bad in a tandem in Boston for many, many years behind Tuukka Rask, right?
Leaf fans know that all too well.
Right? So, Yaro Halak does have that playoff success. I'm not saying that he's any better than Campbell or Peter Mrazek, but if they're looking for maybe a third goaltender, or maybe perhaps, you can get out of the Mrazek contract and bring in Yaro Halak, I don't know. But I thought that might be another player of interest that we could talk about here. But that's it. Those are our 5 guys. So JT Miller, Conor Garland, Luke Shen, Tyler Mott, Yaro Halak, and Brock Besser. If you think there's a chance that none of those guys is the acquired player if the Canucks and Leafs make a deal?
Honestly, I can't think of who else. Like because you think of like you're always thinking about who's the guy that the Canucks are looking to move. Like they're not moving their captain. Like Bo Horvat's not going away, in my opinion. That could change.
I don't think
Um,
so either.
like I'm just looking at what because when I did this, first I went to Cap Friendly just to see who are the UFAs. Like I don't see Alex Chason as a fit. I
No,
don't see, even though he's an Italian, I don't see Philip Di Giuseppe as another
no.
option as well. On defense, Brad Hunt is the only. I mean, between Brad Hunt and Madison Bowie, none of those guys really screen to me as Leafs targets. Tyler Myers to cap it would make everyone run away. Unfortunately, I've heard his name, and I'm just like,
No thanks. No
yeah.
thanks.
And like,
Travis Hamonic, once upon a time, but not anymore.
no,
Not especially since he's got another $3 million cap hit next season as well. If he was a UFA, maybe you could entertain it, but definitely not with that cap hit next year. So yeah, I would be shocked if
yeah.
they do end up pulling the trigger on a trade and it's not one of these guys. Like, maybe if Tucker Poolman gets back. He's currently on LTIR. I don't know how long he's going to be on LTIR for, but he makes $2.5 million for the next few seasons. If they think that he could be part of this team going forward, perhaps they make a move for him. But I would be shocked. I think if they are going to make a trade, it would be for one of those 6 guys that we discussed here on the pod. All right, Dave. I think that's going to do it for us here today. Everybody enjoy the game tomorrow, Maple Leafs and Canucks. I'll be down there. I will be down there taking part in the festivities. Should be a fun one. I'm hoping it's going to be a fun one. But that's new for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow the show at Locked On Leafs. And subscribe also on YouTube. Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Leave a like, subscribe, share, comment, the whole 9 when you're a YouTuber, whatever the hell they say. Anyways,
You got to go with
enjoy
the
the
Steve
weekend,
Dangle.
folks.
You got to go with the Steve Dangle. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends if you want more. Come on back to our channel, Locked On Leafs.
What Dave said. What Dave said.
I know I already screwed that up, but I think I got it pretty close.
What he said, but double that, double that from me. But hey, enjoy the games. Enjoy the game tomorrow, folks. We'll chat back again on Monday. So have a good weekend. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.